All right, hello there, Spartans. We are moving on now that we finished our little project. We're going to move on to the next section, which is lesson 17. So you have this handout in front of you, and we're going to start with something we already know how to do. So let's take this equation right here. This equation, let's solve this equation for x. So I want you to pause the video real quick and do this on your own, and then come back and see how I did it, and then you'll check your work. So you're back, and now we're going to solve this first equation for x. How do I do that? Well, I draw my line down just like so. And then, how do I get rid of this minus 10? Well, the opposite of minusing 10 is adding 10. And if I do that on one side of the equation, I should do it on both sides of the equation. And then, what happens here? Well, my 10s go away over here, and over on the right-hand side, I am getting 10. Should have gone back to the left. The only thing that's left on the left-hand side is x. So x equals 10. That is the solution to my first equation. Let's solve this second equation for x. Shall we? The second equation, x plus y equals 0. Again, pause the video, do it on your own, and see if we get the right answer after all is said and done. Okay, now that you're back, how do we do this? We draw the line down, and how do I undo adding 3? Well, I subtract 3. And I subtract 3 on both sides. On the left-hand side, the plus 3 and the minus 3 cancel out, and I'm left with x. And what does that equal? Well, 0 minus 3 equals negative 3. So I have, for the top one, I have a solution of x equals 10, and for the bottom solution, I have x equals negative 3. Okay? Now, I want us to go to the second page. But before I do, I want you to write in the bottom right-hand corner of the front page, down here, I want you to write a snowman. Okay? And that will tell me whether or not you guys did the note-taking along with the video. So make sure you put a snowman down there. Okay? Let's go to the second page. Now, we're going to solve, this is an equation that looks different. First of all, remember this expression, x minus 10, that was the same expression as was in our first equation. Do you see that? X minus 10, x minus 10. Now, the second expression right there is our second equation right here. X plus 3, x plus 3. So, we're going to learn how to solve this today. And we're going to solve it using something that we call the zero product property. Okay? What is the zero product property? Well, let's do this. Remember, from the front page, we had something called x minus 10 equals 0. And we solved for x. We solved for x by adding 10 to both sides, and we got x equals 10. Okay? And for the second one, we had x plus 3 equals 0. We drew the line, and we subtracted 3 from both sides. And we got x equals negative 3. Okay? And that's what we did on the front page. Now, we're doing the exact same thing on this page. We're doing that because, let's say x equals 10. Let's pretend that x equals 10 and apply that in this equation. How do we do that? Well, everywhere I see an x, I put a 10. So x minus 10 times x plus 3 equals 0. And instead of x, I got to do something real quick here because I got a piece of plastic that's bothering me. Everywhere I see an x, I put a 10 in there. So here I see an x, and in its place I put a 10 in. And it's 10 minus 10, right? So this is the x, and then the 10's down there, right? And then over here, this x, I also put a 10. And then plus 3 equals 0. So now, remember to do this line right here, remember PEMDAS. The P stands for parentheses. So we do everything in the parentheses first. So when I do this parenthesis, I get 10 minus 10, which is, that's right, 0. And I am multiplying it, right, because that's multiplying in between there. I'm multiplying what's in the parentheses here. And what is in the parentheses here? 10 plus 3, which is 13. And what is 0 times 13? Well, 0 times 13 is 0. So that is a true statement. 0, when x equals 10, it turns the whole equation into 0. Now I want to pretend that x equals -3. And I'm getting that from up here. So I got x minus 10 times x plus 3. And then I want to put in -3 everywhere I see an x. So this is -3 minus 10 and -3 plus 3. And then I'm doing my parentheses again. -3 minus 10 is -13. And then -3 plus 3 is 0. And what is -13 times 0? That's right, it's 0. Okay? So, when x equals 3, when x equals -3, that too makes this expression true. So, my solutions are x equals 10 and x equals -3. So this equation has two solutions. It has two solutions. Okay? Now, let's try another equation. This one looks a little bit different, but it really isn't. Now, just because this has 3 factors, now I want you to know what I mean by a factor. This guy right here is a factor. This guy right here is also a factor. And lastly, this guy right here is a factor as well. Okay? So this thing has 3 factors. Wow. So what that means is we have to do 3 equations. Okay? So the first equation is going to be this one right here. And what I do is I set it equal to 0. Because when it equals 0, 0 times whatever these two guys are, I don't care what they are, but 0 times this is going to equal 0. So I'm going to set x over 2 plus 3 equal to 0. That's going to be one equation. Okay? Now, I draw my line, and the first thing I got to do is I got to get rid of this 3. And how do I get rid of plus 3? I minus 3. And I do that on both sides, and that gets me x over 2 equals -3. Now I am dividing x by 2. How do I undo dividing? I multiply by 2. And I'm going to do that to both sides. So x equals 6. That's my first solution. My second solution is going to come from this factor right here. So I'm going to get 5x minus 1 equals 0. Remember, I always want to set these factors equal to 0. Okay? And then I'm solving for x. So I get plus 1 here, plus 1 here. These ones go away, and I'm left with 5x equals 1. And then divide by 5, and I get x equals 1/5. And then if you want to show it as a decimal, you could call it 0.2. Okay? And now for my last solution, I'm going to use this factor. And I'm going to set it equal to 0. So I'm going to do 2x plus 4 equals 0. Draw my line. And then how do I get rid of plus 4? I do minus 4. And I do minus 4 over here too. And then I get 2x equals negative 4. And then, to get rid of the 2, I'm multiplying by 2, so the opposite of multiplying by 2 is dividing by 2. I'm going to do that on both sides of my equation. On the left, I'm left with x, and then negative 4 divided by 2 is going to be negative 2. So my solutions are x equals 6, 1/5, and negative 2. Now, when I say x equals 6, 1/5, and negative 2, that does not mean that it equals all three of those things at the same time. What it means is, excuse me, what it means is that when x equals 6, this equation equals 0. When x equals 1/5, this expression equals 0. And when x equals negative 2, this expression equals 0. Remember, solutions are values for the variable that make this statement true.